Liam's heart pounded as he clutched the control panel of his shuttle, trying desperately to keep it steady. The atmosphere outside Zorax 9 was turbulent, the shuttle's systems flickering, warning lights flashing like an alien heartbeat. Sweat trickled down his forehead as he gripped the controls with both hands, fighting to regain control. This is it, I'm gonna crash. He had known the mission was risky. A test flight to an uncharted planet, alone in deep space. But nothing had prepared him for the storm that ripped through the atmosphere, forcing his ship into a violent, uncontrollable descent. With a final screech of metal and a gut-wrenching thud, the shuttle slammed into the alien planet's rocky surface. Everything went black. When Liam came to, he groaned, rubbing his head. His body ached all over, his seatbelt still tight across his chest. For a moment, everything was a blur. The ship's alarms were still ringing in his ears. The damage was severe. He couldn't see much, just an endless stretch of rocky, red terrain through the cracked window. "Great," he muttered, wincing as he unbuckled his seatbelt. "First day on a new planet and I'm already crashing." He climbed out of the pilot's seat and stumbled toward the exit, his legs weak but functioning. He wasn't sure how long he'd been unconscious, but the ship was in no condition to fly. The emergency beacon was working, but it would take a while before anyone from Earth could come to get him. He needed to make the most of his situation. With a deep breath, Liam stepped out of the shuttle, his boots crunching against the alien soil. The air was thin but breathable. The sky was a strange shade of purple with two moons hanging low. In the distance, jagged mountains loomed like silent giants. The alien planet felt alive yet silent, almost too quiet. As he took his first few steps, Liam noticed something odd movement. Just beyond a rocky outcrop, something small and graceful darted behind a boulder. A shape, alien in appearance, lithe and quick. Great, of course, there would be aliens here. He chuckled nervously, not that I'm not used to it by now. Then the creature appeared. A girl no taller than 5'3", with skin the color of a deep forest green, and eyes that glowed a soft violet. Her hair shimmered like liquid silver, cascading down her back in loose waves. She wore a flowing, translucent tunic, which seemed to ripple as if it was alive. She moved with the grace of someone who had spent her entire life in this strange, rocky land, her every step almost fluid, and her gaze locked onto Liam with an intensity that made him freeze. Liam blinked, wondering if he was seeing things. Okay, this definitely wasn't part of the mission plan. The girl smiled, showing a flash of sharp teeth, but her expression wasn't threatening. In fact, it was more curious than anything else. "You're bleeding, human," she said, her voice a smooth, melodic hum that made Liam's heart skip a beat. Liam frowned and glanced down at his arms. Small cuts and bruises marred his skin. The adrenaline from the crash must have kept him from feeling the pain. Guess I am." The alien girl cocked her head, her violet eyes scanning him like she was assessing a strange new creature. "You're injured. I can help you." "Help me?" Liam repeated, taking a cautious step back. "I mean, I'm fine, really, just a scratch or two. You don't need to." Before he could finish, the girl was in front of him, far too quickly for a creature of her size. She was so close that he could see the tiny flecks of light dancing in her eyes, like stars in a night sky. "I can heal you," she said with a soft smile, her voice now much more gentle, almost playful. "But my way is different." Liam blinked, trying to figure out what exactly she meant. His thoughts scrambled. Healing. He had heard of advanced alien species with strange powers, but this wasn't exactly what he had imagined. "Different, huh?" He raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean by different?" She looked at him for a long moment, a mischievous grin tugging at the corners of her mouth. "You'll see soon enough." Liam opened his mouth to protest, but before he could, the alien girl extended a hand toward him. There was no hesitation in her movement. Her fingers glowed with a faint purple light, and a warmth radiated from her hand, almost like sunlight on a summer day. Liam's heart skipped again. this time not in fear but in something he couldn't quite name. He took a half step back, but something in her gaze held him in place. "What's happening?" he asked, trying to mask the curiosity that gnawed at him. Her grin widened. "Trust me, human, you're about to experience something, unlike anything your kind has ever known." For a moment, time seemed to stretch as the energy from her hand brushed against his skin. And suddenly, a deep warmth flooded his body. It wasn't painful or invasive. It was more like a wave of comfort, wrapping him up in a protective cocoon. But before he could fully understand the sensation, she pulled back, her hand flickering as the glow dimmed. "There, you're healed," she said, stepping back with a satisfied look on her face. Liam stared at her, his mind reeling. He had been expecting something alien, something strange, but not this. Whatever she had done had worked. The cuts were gone, and the aches in his body had faded into nothing. "Whoa," he muttered, blinking in disbelief. "That was unexpected. How did you?" The alien girl laughed softly, her eyes twinkling. "I told you, human, my way is different." Liam shook his head, half in awe, half in confusion. "I think you've just made a big fan of Earth, but I've got a feeling this is just the beginning of a very strange day." Her smile deepened, and she tilted her head, considering him for a moment. "You have no idea, human. Welcome to Zeyrath 9. Liam couldn't help but watch as the alien girl, Zeyrath she had called herself, moved with effortless grace, her eyes always on him, studying him in a way that made his pulse race. Her soft, lilting voice, the glow of her violet eyes, and that playful smile were hard to ignore. He had to admit, in the quiet of this alien world, he was beginning to feel something far stronger than just curiosity. But before he could think too much about it, Zura's words broke through his thoughts. "I can heal you, human, but I told you, my way is different." Liam raised an eyebrow, shifting uncomfortably. "I mean, you already healed my cuts. What else could you possibly do?" Zura smirked, her eyes dancing with amusement. "That was just a simple fix, but you're still injured. Your body is tired from the crash, right? I can feel it. And you still don't trust me, do you?" Liam blinked, surprised. He didn't realize how much of his body had been affected by the crash until she pointed it out. He had assumed that everything was fine once the cuts healed, but the exhaustion was still there, lingering like a shadow. "I trust you," he said, trying to sound casual, though his voice faltered a little. "But I'm still not sure what your way really means." Zura smiled warmly, as if his uncertainty was exactly what she had expected. "You'll see soon enough. Just relax. Trust me this time fully." Liam hesitated. There was something in her voice, something in the way she looked at him, that made him want to trust her, even if he didn't fully understand why. He had never been one to trust easily, but there was something undeniably magnetic about Zura. Her presence felt right. "Okay," he said finally, letting out a deep breath. "I trust you." Zura's eyes softened, and for a moment there was a quiet tenderness in the air. Without another word, she stepped closer to him, her violet gaze locked on his face. "Sit down," she instructed gently, her tone no longer teasing but serious, as though she were preparing for something important. Liam followed her instructions, sitting down on a rock, feeling both nervous and strangely comforted by her presence. Zura knelt in front of him, her fingers hovering above his chest, her gaze focused intently. Her hands glowed again, this time brighter, more vibrant. It was almost as if the very light from the planet itself was being drawn into her, fueling whatever power she had. Liam swallowed hard as he felt a strange warmth begin to radiate from her hands. The air around them seemed to shimmer, and he could feel something deep within him, something that had nothing to do with the physical pain from the crash. His heart beat a little faster as Zura's fingertips brushed his skin. "You're tense," she murmured softly, her voice like a melody. "Let go." Liam wanted to say something, wanted to make a joke, but the words got caught in his throat. There was something about her touch, something so gentle yet powerful that made him forget everything else. The world seemed to fade away, leaving just him and Zura, alone in this alien landscape. As Zura's hands pressed against his chest, the warmth spread through him like a wave, deeper and deeper, until he could feel the energy filling his entire body. It was as if she were pulling all the weariness, all the heaviness of the crash, out of him and into herself. Liam's mind spun, the sensation so foreign and overwhelming that he could hardly keep his thoughts in line. It wasn't painful, far from it, but it was intense, unlike anything he had ever felt before. Zura's violet eyes met his, her face so close to his now that he could feel the soft brush of her breath on his lips. "Just breathe, human. Let it go," she whispered, her voice soothing, coaxing him into a calm he hadn't realized he needed. Liam did as she said, breathing deeply, feeling the tension in his muscles melt away. The pain, the exhaustion, the fear of being stranded on an alien planet, they all seemed to vanish, replaced by a profound sense of peace he couldn't explain. For a few moments, there was nothing but the soft hum of Zura's energy and the steady rhythm of his breathing. His heart slowed, and with it, the storm of his mind settled. He hadn't realized how much he needed this, how much he needed her to make him feel whole again. When Zura finally pulled her hands away, Liam blinked, surprised to find himself feeling lighter, almost as if the weight of the world had been lifted from his shoulders. How do you do that?" he asked, his voice quieter now, awestruck. Zura smiled softly, her eyes glowing with a mixture of pride and something deeper. "It's not just healing, it's connection, my energy and yours. When you trust me completely, when you let me in, I can do more than just heal your wounds. I can help you heal yourself." Liam was silent for a moment, taking in her words. Connection. It was a simple word, but hearing her say it made his chest tighten in a way he hadn't expected. He had always been independent, always relied on himself. But something about Zura, about her way of seeing him, of understanding him without words, made him realize how much he had been missing, how much he had been afraid to connect with anyone. "You're amazing," he said softly, his voice almost a whisper. Zura's smile widened, but there was a hint of something deeper in her expression. "You're not so bad yourself, human." For the first time since he had crash-landed on Zorax 9, Liam felt a flicker of something other than fear and uncertainty. Something that made his heart beat a little faster, something that made him wonder what the rest of his time on this strange planet would bring. And as Zura stood and held out her hand to him, the smile on her face more than just playful, it was warm, inviting, almost like an unspoken promise. Liam realized that, for the first time, he wasn't alone. The hours passed quickly, though neither Liam nor Zura seemed to notice. They had spent the last few minutes walking through the alien landscape, her pace far faster than his, but she kept slowing down, glancing back at him with an encouraging smile whenever he fell behind. Liam found himself distracted, not by the foreign surroundings, but by her energy, her confidence, and the way she made everything feel effortless, like the entire universe was within her control. And even though Zorax 9 was strange and unfamiliar, with its towering rock formations and strange creatures, he felt at ease in her presence. "Do you always move this fast?" Liam asked, trying to catch his breath as he jogged to keep up with her. Zura glanced over her shoulder, her purple eyes sparkling with amusement. "We Elixians are built for speed. We've spent generations adapting to our planet, but you humans aren't so bad yourself." Liam chuckled. "I guess we've got our own kind of speed, just not as fast as you." Zura grinned. "True, but you're fast in other ways. I noticed how quickly you picked up on how my healing works. Most humans would have been too scared to trust me." Liam smiled, scratching the back of his head. "Well, you make it hard not to trust you. You've got this whole, mysterious alien healer vibe going for you." Her eyes twinkled with mischief. "Mysterious, huh? You'll learn there's more to me than meets the eye." Liam felt a jolt in his chest. There was something about the way she said that, something in her tone that seemed like a promise or maybe a challenge. He wasn't sure. Before he could respond, a loud screech echoed through the valley. The sound was so sudden and deafening that it made him jump. "Did you hear that?" Liam asked, his voice tense. Zura stiffened, her head turning sharply toward the sound. Her expression hardened. "The Vrexels." "Vrexels?" Liam repeated, instinctively stepping closer to her. He could hear the growls now growing louder with each passing second. "They're dangerous," Zura said, her voice clipped. "I'll deal with them, stay behind me." Before Liam could even think to protest, Zura had already started running toward the source of the noise, her movements fluid and fast, leaving him no choice but to follow. They made their way over jagged rocks, the sound of the Vrexels growing closer, the screeches now mixing with their low, growling growls. Liam's heart hammered in his chest, adrenaline flooding his system. When they reached the crest of a hill, the source of the noise became clear. A pack of massive, clawed creatures, each the size of a small truck, was charging toward them. Their eyes glowed a vicious red and their teeth were sharp, almost gleaming in the eerie light. Liam's eyes widened. "Those things are huge." Zura stood her ground, her violet eyes narrowed with concentration. She lifted her hands in front of her, and Liam watched as her fingers began to glow with that same purple energy he had felt before. "Stay close," Zura said, her voice calm but fierce. "Let me handle them." Liam took a deep breath and nodded. "I'm with you." Zura's hands began to hum with energy, and the ground beneath the Vrexels shook. She made a sharp motion with her hands, and a huge rock wall shot up between them and the creatures, blocking their path. Liam blinked in amazement. "Whoa, that's incredible." Zura didn't respond. Her focus was entirely on the creatures now, but the wall wouldn't hold forever. The Vrexels began clawing at it, their massive paws tearing through the rock. "We don't have long," Zura said through gritted teeth. "We need to get to higher ground. They'll break through soon." "Okay, let's go," Liam said, ready to follow. But as he turned to run, a sudden flash of purple caught his eye. Zura, still looking calm on the outside, was visibly shaking. Her energy field flickered, as though it was stretching too thin. Sweat beaded on her forehead and her breath came in quick gasps. Liam's heart skipped a beat. "Zura, you're not okay." "I'm fine," she snapped, though there was a hint of strain in her voice. "We need to move." But Liam wasn't fooled. Something was wrong. He stepped forward, catching her by the arm before she could push forward again. "No, Zura, you're using too much of your energy. You can't just keep going like this." Zura's eyes flashed with something he couldn't quite place, frustration, pride. But when she looked at him, there was a softness in her gaze. "You don't understand, human. I have to protect us." "I get that, but not at the cost of your health," Liam said firmly, his voice steady, even as panic began to bubble inside him. Zura stared at him for a long moment, and just when Liam thought she might pull away, she softened. Her shoulders relaxed and she nodded, though she still looked exhausted. "All right, I'll rest for a moment." Liam helped her sit down against a rock, his concern growing as he watched her face pale slightly. "I'm not letting you do this alone," he said quietly, his voice surprisingly calm. Zura looked up at him, her eyes wide, as though seeing him for the first time in a new way. For a long moment she didn't say anything. Then her lips curved into a small, sincere smile. "Thank you, human. You're different from the others." Liam's heart skipped a beat at her words. For the first time since he'd arrived on Zorax 9, he felt like he wasn't just some stranded astronaut in a foreign land. He was part of something bigger. With a sigh, Zura stood again, steadying herself against him. "Let's finish this, together." Liam smiled, his hand resting lightly on her arm. "Together." And as they faced the Vrexels once again, something shifted between them, something unspoken but powerful. They were no longer just an astronaut and an alien healer. They were two souls, connected by the chaos of their world, and perhaps by something more. Liam's heart was still pounding as he helped Zura to her feet. The Vrexels had been temporarily stunned by the pulse grenade, but it was only a matter of time before they regained their strength. The ground beneath them was shaking again as the creatures began to stir, growling low and threatening. "Get ready," Zura said, her voice strained but still steady. "We need to move now." Liam nodded, his own adrenaline kicking in as he took her hand, pulling her to her feet. Her grip was strong, but he could feel the faint tremor in her fingers, a reminder that she wasn't as invincible as she seemed. He didn't want to leave her side. He didn't want her to get hurt. But before they could take more than a few steps, the ground trembled once more and a loud roar filled the air. The Vrexels were on the move again. This time they weren't stumbling, they were charging straight at them. "We don't have much time," Liam said, trying to stay calm as the creatures closed the gap. "What's the plan?" Zura's face hardened with determination. "I can hold them off for a little longer, but you have to trust me. There's a cave system up ahead. If we can make it there, we'll be safe." Liam's eyes darted ahead, spotting the faint outline of a cave entrance in the distance. It looked small, but it might be their only chance. "All right," he said, glancing back at the Vrexels. They were getting closer, moving faster now. "We run for it." Without another word, they took off, sprinting across the rocky terrain. The Vrexels' screeches echoed behind them, and Liam could hear their claws scraping against the ground, gaining on them with terrifying speed. Zura was moving like lightning, her energy barely flickering, but her strength was still impressive. She was keeping up with him easily, even though she had just used so much of her power. "Zura, Liam began, but he cut himself off as he looked at her. She was visibly exhausted, her breath coming in ragged gasps, but there was something fierce in her eyes. She wasn't going to give up. "I'm fine, human," she said through gritted teeth, glancing back at him. "Keep running." They pushed forward, the cave now just a few hundred yards away, but the Vrexels weren't far behind. Liam's legs burned with the effort, but Zura was already ahead, her energy pulsating around her like a shield, pushing her forward even faster. "Zura," Liam shouted, "wait for me." She glanced over her shoulder, her expression unreadable. "I'm not leaving you behind, human," she called back. "We make it together, remember." Liam's chest tightened at her words. The promise in her voice was clear. They were in this together, no matter what. But the Vrexels weren't giving up. One of the larger ones leaped into the air, landing between them and the cave entrance with a thunderous crash. Liam stumbled, nearly falling into the rocks as the beast let out a ferocious roar. "Get down," Zura shouted, pushing Liam to the ground as the Vrexels circled them. The creatures were everywhere now, their eyes glowing menacingly in the dim light. Zura stepped in front of Liam, her stance wide and firm, her hands glowing faintly as she prepared to defend them both. "Zura," Liam said, his voice shaking, "you've already done so much. I can't." "Don't argue," she snapped, her voice fierce. "I'll protect you, just trust me." With that, she raised her hands, and a barrier of purple energy shimmered into existence, blocking the charging Vrexels. The creatures slammed into it, their claws scratching against the shield, but Zura held her ground. But even as the shield held strong, Zura's energy was flickering. The strain was evident on her face. Sweat beaded on her forehead and her breath was coming in ragged gasps. She was running out of strength. "Zura," Liam whispered, his heart aching as he saw the toll this was taking on her. "I'm fine," she breathed, though her voice was starting to waver. "We just need a few more seconds." Liam looked around desperately. There had to be something, anything they could use. Then he saw it. A pile of loose rocks nearby, perched above the path the Vrexels were charging down, if he could dislodge them. "Zura, hold them off just a little longer," he said urgently, his voice full of determination. She barely nodded, her focus never leaving the Vrexels. Liam rushed toward the rocks, his hands shaking as he moved quickly. He didn't know if this would work, but he had to try. He pulled at the loose stones, kicking and pushing with all his strength. Finally, a large boulder rolled free, tumbling down toward the pack of creatures. The Vrexels let out a collective roar of surprise as the rock crashed into their path, momentarily blocking their way. The creatures screeched in frustration, unable to move past the fallen debris. Liam turned back to Zeyrath, who was panting heavily but had managed to hold the shield steady. "Go," he shouted, waving her toward the cave. "Now I've got this." Zeyrath hesitated for a moment, her eyes meeting his with something that could only be called gratitude, and something else, something more. She didn't have time to say anything, though. She simply nodded, her energy flaring one last time before she dashed toward the cave entrance. Liam was right behind her, pushing his body forward despite the exhaustion that was beginning to set in. He could still hear the Vrexels behind them, but they were slow now, disoriented by the sudden obstacle. With a final burst of speed, they reached the cave's entrance. Zeyrath ducked inside, followed closely by Liam, and they both collapsed against the cool, rocky walls, gasping for breath. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The cave was silent except for the sound of their heavy breathing. Zeyrath's shoulders were heaving and her face was pale, but there was a small, relieved smile on her lips. "You did it," she whispered, looking up at Liam, her violet eyes soft with admiration. Liam smiled back, his heart racing, not from fear but from something deeper, something that made him feel alive in ways he couldn't explain. "We did it," he corrected gently, "together." And as they sat in the quiet darkness of the cave, surrounded by the echoes of their shared victory, Liam realized that Zeyrath wasn't just someone he was stuck with on this strange planet. She was something more, someone who had become indispensable to him. And maybe, just maybe, he was starting to feel the same for her. But for now, there was only the quiet, the two of them, and the feeling of something new blooming between them, something neither of them could yet name. The cave was cool and dark, its walls smooth and shadowed, a contrast to the chaotic, sun-scorched world outside. It smelled of damp earth and the faint, sweet scent of alien flowers that clung to the edges of the rocks. Inside, the only light came from the dim glow of Zeyrath's energy. Her power was still flickering, but it was enough to cast soft violet shadows around them. Liam leaned against the cool stone, his breath finally slowing as the adrenaline began to wear off. His legs felt like jelly, and his heart was still racing from the narrow escape. But there was something else beneath the surface, something deeper than the fear or the excitement. A quiet feeling, almost unspoken, that had been building since he first laid eyes on Zeyrath. She was sitting across from him, her back against the wall, her knees drawn up to her chest. Her violet eyes were closed, but there was a tiredness in her features that made Liam's chest tighten. She had used so much of her energy, her strength, to protect both of them. It was clear that she was exhausted, her body drained, and he could see how much it had cost her. "Zeyrath," he said softly, his voice breaking the silence, "are you okay?" She opened her eyes slowly, meeting his gaze. The usual spark in her eyes was dimmed by exhaustion, but there was still something there, a quiet strength, something unshakable. She gave him a faint smile, though it didn't reach her eyes the way it usually did. "I'm fine," she replied, her voice quieter than usual. "I just need a moment." Liam frowned. He knew she was trying to downplay it, trying to act like everything was fine, but he wasn't fooled. Zeyrath had given everything to protect him, to protect them both. She had been willing to use up her energy without a second thought. He moved closer, his steps cautious, as if he was afraid of disturbing her, but the concern was growing too strong to ignore. "You're not fine, Zeyrath," he said gently. "You're not okay, and I can't just sit here and pretend everything's fine." She sighed, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of everything was finally catching up to her. "I told you before, human," she said with a soft, weary laugh. "I'm not like you. I don't need to rest, but maybe I'm starting to learn that even I have limits. Liam's heart ached as he looked at her, seeing how vulnerable she was for the first time. She was always so confident, so strong. But now, in this quiet cave, she was just human, just like him. I don't want you to sacrifice everything for me, Liam said quietly, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. I'm not worth it, I'm not. Zura's eyes softened and she reached out, touching his arm gently, her fingers warm against his skin. You are worth it, Liam, she said firmly, her voice low but steady. You're more than you realize. I've never met anyone like you, no human, no one from my world. You make me feel different. You make me want to be better. Liam blinked, surprised by her words. He had always seen himself as just a guy trying to survive, trying to make it through this alien world. But hearing Zura speak like that, it was like a light was shining through the darkness he hadn't realized was there. I don't know how to be better, he admitted, his voice rough. I don't know what to do. Zura smiled, a little more brightly this time, though the exhaustion was still there. You're already better. You've been better since the moment you trusted me, since the moment you didn't run when everything else told you to. You're stronger than you think, Liam. You don't have to have all the answers, just keep trusting. Liam felt his chest tighten as her words sank in. It was the trust. That was the key. She had trusted him even when it didn't make sense, and now it was his turn to trust her. Okay, he said softly, a small smile tugging at his lips. I can do that. I'll trust you, Zura, no matter what happens next. Her smile deepened, and for a moment the weight of the world seemed to lift from both of them. There was something about the way they connected in that moment, something unspoken, something powerful. But before they could say anything else, the distant rumble of the Vrexel's growls echoed through the cave. Zura's expression instantly shifted, her eyes narrowing in focus as she stood up, pushing away from the wall with a burst of energy. We don't have much time, she said, her voice now all business. We've got to keep moving. If we stay here too long, they'll track us. Liam stood up too, suddenly feeling that familiar rush of urgency flood his system again. But this time there was no fear, there was no doubt. Zura reached out, her hand brushing against his. Stay close to me, we'll make it through this. Liam nodded, his heart thumping, but this time not with fear. He wasn't afraid anymore. With Zura by his side, he felt like they could face anything together. They stepped out of the cave, their footsteps light on the rocky ground as they moved toward the unknown. There was danger ahead, but there was also something new growing between them, something that was more than just survival. It was a bond, forged in the heat of battle, tempered by trust, and now stronger than ever. As they moved forward, Liam couldn't help but glance at Zura. Her face was still weary, but there was a fire in her eyes. A promise that no matter what came next, they wouldn't face it alone. Together, he whispered to himself, the word feeling right. And as Zura turned to him with a knowing smile, he knew that whatever came next, they'd face it as one. The night on Zorax 9 was unlike anything Liam had ever experienced. The stars overhead seemed to pulse with an ethereal glow, like tiny diamonds scattered across velvet. The moons hung low in the sky, casting pale light over the rocky terrain that stretched for miles. The air was cool and crisp, a welcome change after the heat and chaos of the day. Liam and Zura had made their way deeper into the mountains after the Vrexels had finally retreated. The pulse grenade had done its job, but they didn't feel safe just yet. They had to find shelter, somewhere quiet and hidden where they could rest. And they had. Now they were sitting on a ledge overlooking the valley, the silence between them more comforting than any words could have been. Zura's head was resting on Liam's shoulder, her body relaxed against his as they sat side by side. The exhaustion from the day's events had finally caught up with them both, but there was an undeniable sense of peace now that the danger had passed. Liam could feel Zura's breath, slow and steady, rising and falling with his own, as the warmth of her presence seeped into his bones. "Are you okay?" Liam asked quietly, breaking the silence. He glanced down at her, his voice soft with concern. Zura shifted slightly, lifting her head to look at him, her violet eyes meeting his with a quiet intensity. "I'm okay," she said with a small smile, though there was a vulnerability in her eyes that Liam hadn't seen before. "Just tired." Liam nodded, his own exhaustion finally catching up with him as well. But he didn't mind. They had made it through the worst of it. He had Zura by his side, and for the first time since crashing on this strange world, he felt like maybe everything was going to be okay. "You've done more than enough," Liam said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've saved me more times than I can count. I don't know how to thank you." Zura chuckled softly, the sound warm and comforting. "You don't need to thank me, human, it's just what I do." But then her smile faded and she looked away, staring out into the valley as if lost in thought. Liam noticed the shift in her mood, the change in her expression. He reached out, gently placing a hand on hers, his thumb brushing over her fingers in a quiet gesture of comfort. "Hey," he said softly, "what's on your mind?" She hesitated, looking at their joined hands before finally meeting his eyes again. "I've been running from something for a long time," she said quietly. "From my past, from my duty, from everything that ties me down. I thought I could handle it on my own. I thought I had everything under control." Liam's heart ached as he listened to her, hearing the raw honesty in her voice. He knew what it was like to feel burdened by your own past, to feel like you were carrying something too heavy to bear. And now, hearing Zura speak so openly about it made him realize just how much she had been carrying, even before they met. "You don't have to do it alone anymore," Liam said, his voice gentle but firm. "You don't have to carry that weight by yourself, not with me here." Zura looked at him then, her eyes searching his face as if she were looking for something. Her gaze softened, and slowly she gave him a smile, a real smile, one that reached her eyes. "I know," she whispered. "I'm starting to believe that." There was a moment of quiet between them, and in that silence, everything that had been left unsaid hung in the air like an unspoken promise. They didn't need to say anything more. They both understood now. Whatever came next, they would face it together. No more running. No more hiding. Liam squeezed her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles in a tender, reassuring motion. "We'll figure it out, together." Zura nodded, leaning into him once more, her head resting against his shoulder. She sighed softly, the tension in her body finally easing as she let herself relax. "I don't know what I would have done without you, human." "You don't have to," Liam replied with a smile, "because I'm not going anywhere." They sat there for a long time, the quiet hum of the planet's night creatures filling the air around them. It was peaceful now, after the storm, after the chaos. The world seemed still, as if it, too, was taking a moment to catch its breath. Liam closed his eyes for a moment, just letting the sounds of the night wash over him, letting the moment stretch out as long as it could. But then, as if on cue, Zura shifted slightly, pulling away just enough to look up at him, her violet eyes meeting his with a glint of mischief. "All right, human," she said, her voice playful again, the spark in her eyes returning. "I think I've had enough of sitting around. We've survived monsters, crashes, and, well, whatever else this planet throws at us. How about a little adventure?" Liam raised an eyebrow, a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Adventure, huh? I thought we were already in the middle of one." Zura's smile widened and she stood up, offering him a hand. "Oh, we're just getting started. You've seen nothing yet." Liam took her hand, pulling himself to his feet with a laugh. "Lead the way, Zura. I'm right behind you." And as they stepped into the unknown together, side by side, Liam realized that there was no place he would rather be. Not on this strange planet, not in this foreign world. As long as he had Zura, he knew he could face anything. Together, they could do anything.